So, good morning, everyone. I am really happy that you all are here on a Saturday this early in the morning. I just want to tell you something. I was freaking out because this morning someone crashed into an electrical pole. I don't know what it was. So, our entire area lost electricity. So, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. What can I do? I was like, kind of like students, when they email you 5 minutes before the due date. So thankfully, power was restored and I am here. But welcome, everyone. I am very happy to see you all. So this morning's talk is not going to be necessarily a happy one. It's one that hopefully it's going to bring reflexivity to all of us. And what is it about? Well, it's about race. Let's talk about race and having these difficult conversations that we often don't have. So let's go ahead and start by, there you go. I want you to take some time and think about, when was the last time that you had a conversation about race? It can be in the classroom, it could be with your family, with your friends, with whomever you want. But when was the last time that you had a conversation about race? Okay, recently. And please raise your hand, because as much as I love the chat, I love hearing voices even more. So don't be afraid to talk. This morning, wow, last night, yesterday. Wow, that is awesome. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about, was it honest? What was the conversation like? So we talked about race, but what was that like? Edith, I think you wanted to say something.
Yes, I was just filling out the, getting registered to take the vaccine, and the question is, what's your race? And the only option there, I guess, by default is white. So I chose white. So we had a whole conversation of, why those are the only options there. I mean, Pacific Highlander was the other, and other things like that. But it's white, and then Hispanic or non-Hispanic were the options for the other question.
Okay, and what does that mean for you?
I guess that they have to judge me by a color. I guess I have to fill out a color. I don't know. That was the confusing and the conversation that we had.
Okay, all right, interesting. Yvette, my kid asked why the police is mean to Black people. Okay, could you talk a little bit about that? Since I'm a criminologist, that's kind of an interesting
Sure. So he's 80 years old, and I guess he saw a video, and he said, like, it was a video making fun of some events. He said the neighbor just called and said, called the police and said there's a Black man, and the police came, and they were so mean to the Black person, and they arrested him and they beat him up, and why do they have to be so mean? And then he's like, why do they make fun of them? And so I was, first of all, kind of like, why is he watching that video? We're always trying to make sure he doesn't watch these things. But I was like, okay, I guess it's an opportunity to talk about this. And so I just told him, I said, it's sometimes people don't understand who people are. And if I said the police is gonna, it was a hard topic, because I'm like, the police will do their job if a person doesn't listen to what the police is instructing, whether you're Black or brown or whatever person you are, then you're gonna get in trouble for that. So you need to respect what the police is saying. I said, but sometimes some people want to use their power as well. So we just have to be respectful to each other and try to understand each other. And then he's like, okay. But it was very difficult because he's only 8, so.
Yeah, those are, I mean, those are very tough conversations, right? Lucia, you said almost daily nowadays. Uh, and why is that? I mean, obviously, we've seen a lot of media, we've seen a lot of different news stories coming up and popping up almost on a daily, and that's kind of astonishing, right? Uh, the reason why I asked this is because I'm in the social sciences, and as I said, I mean, as Devaya said, I teach criminal justice, so not talking about race in my classroom would be an irresponsibility from my part, right? Uh, and I always talk to my students and I asked, so when was the last time that you talked about race? I asked them exactly these questions. And most of them said, not really. I mean, we don't really talk about race. We don't really talk a lot about race in our classes. So it got me thinking, why is it that we don't talk about race, right? So what is race? Well, the first thing is that race is not biological. I know we have been taught that since we were like in secondary school, but the reality is that race is a social construct. Yes, Carrie, thank you. Race is a social construct. And if race is a social construct, then who are the ones that get to define it? How do we construct this concept of race? And for what purpose? What do y'all think? Again, you can use the chat, you can raise your hand. Crisol,
Yes. So yesterday I had a conversation with my students precisely about the idea that social constructs can be very dangerous, especially when people in power use them to separate themselves as maybe above everybody else. So it was a session for an ethics class, and we were talking about how historically a lot of the ethical, the moral philosophers have used this idea that if you are a rational being, then you are not only capable of being a moral agent, but also deserving moral consideration. So that historically, groups have been left out, like women and people of color, because it was believed that they didn't have the properties needed to be considered moral agents. So what you're saying about who's the one who decides whether or not, how that construct is built has a lot to do with oppression and those who are in power.
yes, absolutely. I think Terry, you had your hand up. I don't know if you want to jump in. Yeah, go for it.
I don't actually want to jump in. I think my computer is just doing weird things.
Oh, you gotta love technology, right? Don't worry, it's fine.
Sorry.
But yes, absolutely, right? I mean, it's about power. So, real quick, I come from a very critical paradigm. I look at a lot into like critical race theory, lab crit theory, and post-structuralist theories. So I already have a bias within me, right, because of my particular worldview. But it is still important to acknowledge that this lens is going to shape the way that we think a lot of these issues. So definitely, it's all about power, right? Who gets to decide? Well, those within power, and you're able to marginalize individuals. So just keep that in mind whenever we continue. So let me ask you this. Why is talking about race so difficult? And again, how many of you have talked about race within your classes? Maybe within your immediate family, but what about your classes with your students? Manny?
I would say easily because it's a very short slide into politics and conflict, and those kinds of things go back to people's beliefs that it's really hard to change people's minds or convince people to see things in a different way.
Okay, Sarah, I think it was you, and then Robin, and then Esteban.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult to talk about race because if you have a critical race perspective, you sort of acknowledge that we're all swimming in this dirty bathwater of white supremacy and capitalist patriarchy, and it's affecting us and it's like soaked into us and it's affected us all. And so we have to look at ourselves and see this like ugliness that has a, you know, it's in us. So that is really scary. So I think that's why one reason why it's difficult.
It is very scary indeed. Robin?
I'm sorry, Marco, that was a mistake.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. But Esteban, go for it.
Yeah, it puts you in a vulnerable position. The easy part is to see racism in others, in their words and actions. But a couple of seconds later, you realize you're projecting your own shortcomings onto others. So then you have to deal with that introspection of yourself and the times that you've come short of the ideal self that you wish you were. You know, whether it
Absolutely,
be in
right?
thought. You know, you have to admit, I've had racist thoughts. I've enjoyed a racist joke. And here I am being guilty of the thing that I'm criticizing others for.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And a lot of this makes us uncomfortable, right? But at the same time, uncomfortable shouldn't necessarily be a bad word. Paulina?
Hi everyone. I think it's not that it's difficult to talk about it. It's because we have learned that being different is bad and it's not correct. So being different, being of a different skin color is bad and it shouldn't be like that. So since we think it's bad, we don't want to talk about it because we don't know how everyone else is going to think about that topic. But it shouldn't be like that. Like being different, it's normal and it's beautiful.
Yes, and we're slowly coming to that realization, right? And I say very slowly, uh, but that's for another topic and another hour conversation. Yes, Matthew, growth is uncomfortable. Absolutely. When we talk about uncomfortability, it's not just that, oh, I feel bad for myself. Oh my God, this is so awkward. But it's about, okay, maybe I screwed up, but what can I learn from this? What's going on here, right? And that's what I mean when I say, well, uncomfortable shouldn't necessarily be a bad word because it's an opportunity to grow. So thank you, Matthew, for that. Um, so how do we address the conversation? How do we address this conversation about race that we've all identified that is very difficult and very uncomfortable to talk about? So the first thing that we should do is, let's be honest. What is your motivation? Why is it that we're going to talk about race within our classroom? What are the motives behind? Drew? Go ahead, Drew, if you want to talk. Going once, going twice. All right, sold. So what is, okay, go for it.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I thought when you talked to me, never mind. I was just saying I have an advantage because I teach psychology, and stereotype threat is one of the subjects that I talk about in every class, and it allows people to see that the kinds of prejudice that we hold, even against ourselves, hold us back and make lower expectations. So when you look at that and start saying things and using examples, and I have many of them, it really makes students think, wow, that's true. That I didn't realize I was telling myself those negative messages, and I don't know where I got them other than socialization, but it's holding me back, and I should think differently. I should empower myself.
Yeah, and definitely some of us, because of the discipline that we're at, it's going to be a little bit easier, right? But that's the purpose of this, conversation. That it shouldn't matter what kind of discipline you teach. We should all have this racial talk in our class. and we can address it in various different ways. So again, check your own biases, right? That was discussed right now. Check your own biases. Sometimes we think that are against all of this, but then also we're like, well, wait, hold on a second. I may have done something that was kind of discriminatory in the past, or I may have this thought that wasn't necessarily, the most adequate one, right? So check your own internal biases. The second one, be respectful, right? These are conversations that are not light. They're very complex. So know who your audience is. Depending on your audience, this conversation is going to vary. So what do I mean by that? Depending on who's in your audience. Yeah, so definitely within the design of the experiment or the research, race is done by whoever the PI is going. Yeah, definitely. Many people cannot handle for their beliefs to be challenged. Okay, so what do you mean by that, Manny?
I mean, that's what makes the conversation so difficult sometimes, or even impossible. Some people are just, a lot of us, and I'm sure, some people would say me, that we're just so set in our mindset that they're not open to being, to discussing some of these things. A good example, you mentioned earlier, when's the last time we talked about race? My son, he's 10. I was trying to explain the flag. He asked about a flag that he saw with the thin blue line flag. And in short, you can quickly, say the positive side of it, but I knew I would have to explain the negative of it. And that Chauvin officer was in the news yesterday, and it all snowballs into a bigger image of conflict than what's on the.
Okay, I think I saw someone's hand up, but I don't see it anymore. So if you could just raise your hand, or you can talk right now. Going once, going twice. All right. So definitely know your audience, right? I mean, who's in your audience? That's going to determine also the direction of the conversation. And also, depending on who's in your audience, prepare to be uncomfortable, prepare to be challenged. As Manny said, right? Sometimes we're going to be challenged on what is it that we think. And does that necessarily mean that it's bad? No, once again, right? This uncomfortability is an opportunity for us to learn and to grow as individuals. Here's a big one. Research. Research, research, research. If you know that you're going to have a conversation about race, or you're thinking about, okay, how am I going to bring race into this particular lecture, or whatever it may be, do your research beforehand. And the reason for that is because as members of a marginalized community, it's okay, we can talk about it, we can talk about certain issues, but at the same time, it becomes very exhausting to having to explain and to talk about these things. So the very least that you could do as individuals, or we can do, right, because I'm going to be part of this, is, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of research. And then that way, when we get to that particular conversation, if I'm wrong, or if I'm, thinking from this perspective, I can be challenged, and at least I have an idea, right? But so many times, it doesn't happen, unfortunately, right? Be open. Once again, you're being uncomfortable, that's perfectly fine. Be open to understand different positions. Remember, depending on your positionality, the views are going to change. So don't be afraid, right? Reflect. You've been challenged. You were uncomfortable. Now what? What do I do? What do I do with all of this information that I just got? Was I really that wrong? What happened? So this is a moment where we get to reflect. And lastly, you can take action. And what does take action mean? What does that mean, take action? Let's see for your own classes. What would that look like to take action? Learn, learn, learn. Okay. What else?
So in my human growth class, we talk about research that shows that if babies are exposed to people of different races and ethnicities at a young age, and they're less likely to be biased when they're older. So we talk about how you can raise your children to, be racially mindful, I guess.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Advocate. Yes, that would be the ultimate form of taking action, right, Yasmin? Be an advocate. Lead by example. Treat everyone the same. Absolutely, right? All of that is going to be part of taking action. So let's go ahead and practice. Regardless of your discipline, race can be part of your class. Whether you teach math, whether you teach statistics, or criminal justice, psychology, history, biology, we all can have this race conversation within our class. So if I could have a breakout room, let's do a shuffle, and I want you to answer these 3 questions. In which ways can you be conscious about race? How can you improve? And ultimately, how can we apply that into our place of employment, into our classroom, into our office setting, or wherever it may be?
Oh, I teach mathematics.
Okay, so what do you think?
Well, I was telling my group that, kind of being smart, I was saying, mathematics doesn't really play into a race because mathematics is universal, it's defined, it's exact. But when we go outside of that, with all the other people that were mentioning that they have trouble with the technology, especially they have students that were from Juarez, and then they had trouble with the internet. That's one way of also introducing race, that, or how it affects race, that the accessibility, the equity that everybody shares, especially in the classroom, and for the knowledge to be reached for everyone the same.
Yeah, so one of the challenges, right, is do not just think of it as in a bubble, right? Because mathematics does not exist in a bubble, right? There's so many different factors that continue to influence mathematics. Think about, like, who are the mathematicians that are getting the awards? Who are the individuals that have graduate degrees in mathematics, and why is that? So a lot of these aspects, right, still have to do within your discipline. So thank you very much. Yasmin, real quick before we end this. I know I'm taking more time than I should.
I think the only thing is just including as much diversity as we can, and people of color in our classrooms, and also just looking at the background of what we're teaching, right? So not just looking at now and what we're teaching, but where it came from.
Absolutely, right. And again, right, ultimately, it's not that we don't just want to say, oh, we're not racist. We should be anti-racist, right? And that is a very profound and difficult challenge, because it takes a lot of reflection and a lot of internal work. So here are some readings that you could take and talk about and see how that could shape your classroom. But I hope you all learned something, or at least got you thinking about, how can I bring this into my classroom? So thank you all.